of things that are kicking off right now. I mean, you have the CU Buffs, who this last weekend pulled off the tremendous upset. It's been a lot of ups and downs for the boys up there in Boulder this year so far, but at home, they upset the number 22 Iowa State Cyclones over the weekend. A big storming of the crowd. They took down the goalposts. Just the fanfare and all the things that you love to see about college football. That was what you got to see up there in Folsom over the weekend. I know Coach Prime was a little bit taken aback by that Big 12 $50,000 fine, saying that, hey, you know what? Maybe all the students could chip in a little bit. Everybody that ran in. It's like when you had a party back in the day. Well, everybody got to chip in if you want to be able to have a little something, right? I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to work, Coach, but, I think that's if you're on CU
there's
side
actually
of things,
an update on that, Jordan.
Is there? Okay.
From Brian Howell, who is a longtime CU Buffs beat reporter. He writes for Buff Zone and the Boulder Daily Camera. He said today the Big 12 informed Colorado that they did everything they could for field storm management procedures. They will not receive a fine.
Oh, that's
for
great
the
news,
field
man.
rushing, because they tried to keep the students off, but everybody knows these college kids are going to do what they want to do. So
yeah, I mean, when you have, tens of thousands of co-eds that are pushing those boundaries, brother, you don't have enough manpower to be able to stop them. That's what it comes down to. And I can also say it from the layout of the field at Folsom as somebody who stormed the field twice. Stormed the field when CU beat West Virginia, College Football Night in America, fall 2008, when Pat McAfee missed the game-winning field goal for West Virginia. Also, the next year, when my CSU Rams, the only time that in the recent history, or it might be the only time that the Rocky Mountain Showdown was ever played at a home site and not a neutral site, CSU Rams upset the Buffs, baby. And me and Griggsy boy, we stormed the field and we took the Boulder and had mayhem out there that night. So, like I say, it's a very easy field to be stormed. You don't have enough manpower unless they were to put up like a considerable amount of guardrails and whatnot. And even just with the slope of the bowl in the stadium, it's an easy thing to hop and get down. It's not hard. But moving along from that, you had the Broncos and the Jets play over in England. And I mean, first and foremost, I hate the London series, period. I'll put that out there. I hate the international games. I think it's terrible for the players. I understand that it's good for the growth of the game and for the business. And I understand all of those things. But why don't the people in the NFL just say that it's for the aim of growing the game and for profit, and that you don't really care about player safety? Because you make them go play an early game over there in London last week, and then the Broncos got to come right back here and play in Denver. So the jet lag that they've had to deal with over the last couple of weeks, going all the way over there, all the way back, along with the car crash of a game and the inflammation of flying, you don't care about player safety, bro. You don't. Plain and simple. Just admit it, Goodell. That game also over there in London statistically was the worst ever international game. International games are usually always a blunder for many different reasons, whether it be, the timeline shift, or from a lot of former players that have came out speaking to it. They say that, hey, honestly, for a lot of us, this is a first-class trip to go experience a different part of the world, kind of immerse ourselves in some culture. We're not always the most focused on international games. We're seeing some sites and all of that, which, hey, call it for what it is. There's a human element to it. There are some guys who are going to be locked in on an all-business trip, but when you're also dealing with a lot of sub-25-year-old guys, you're going to deal with some lack of focus or some immaturity at times. I will say it again. I hate the international games. I hate the way that they do these stupid little soccer-looking logos for the NFL, but that's my soapbox rant for it. Keep the NFL the NFL. The Avs are off to a solid start so far. The Nuggets are about a week out from the season opener. The Major League Baseball postseason is in the League Championship Series. The Dodgers are a juggernaut. I mean, their pitching staff is one after the other. Almost every one of these guys that they're bringing out there, at least 1 through 3, 1 through 4, they could be aces on any other team. For those who aren't familiar with baseball, that means that's the number one guy in the rotation. Yeah. Hopefully we see the Mariners continue to pull forward, and they maybe pull off the Cinderella story. But if not, they may be the dark side. They may be the juggernaut or the empire or whatever people of modern baseball want to call them. But I wouldn't mind seeing Clayton Kershaw go out on a high note. All of that to be said, want to give a massive shout out to the whole Mile High Sports crew, especially my man Danny Bailey holding it down for me each and every week. Moving along from that, we have the Colorado Rundown. Guys, as we move here a couple of weeks into Q4, we're going to have some events that are stacking up toward the end of the year, though there are, comparatively speaking, there are going to be some opportunities for a lot of people that will happen last second, will happen late notice. And that's whether it's here on the local level to the regional to the UFC. Around the holidays, there just tends to be fights that fall out, people who get short notice, so on and so forth. So a lot of these things could be subject to change. Keep that in mind. In a couple of weeks, we have Sparta on November 1st, getting after it. You have CJJC back in the mix on December 6th at the Stampede. The next weekend after that, you have 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series on December 13th. That's going to be a Muay Thai matinee. And then following that out, you have Colorado Combat Club going to be in action December 20th at the Stampede as well. There is also going to be Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship that's going to be here in December. Our friend of the program, the Big Yins, he's supposed to be on the card or scheduled on the card right now. So we'll have more updates for the BKFC show as we grow closer to that date. See if we can get that big ugly ogre on the show with us for one more time here before he fights. Moving from that, we're going to transition now into the weekend recap. We had a dual affair over the weekend here in the greater Denver area for both MMA as well as Muay Thai. On Friday night, we had Colorado Combat Club 26, and I know that I'm close to the forest on this one, and I don't want to have recency bias. But I don't think that it is out of line to say that this was for sure a top 5 card in company history. Maybe even 3. I just don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but I will 100% say that I think that that was a top 5 show in the history of our promotion. When we run through some of these results and talk about a couple of these fights, I hope that that paints the picture for you as to why. And if you didn't have a chance to watch, as those are being worked on getting uploaded onto YouTube from the company as we speak, hopefully in the next couple of days, once you hear this message, you get a chance to go check out some of these fights that we're about to talk about, because it is absolutely worth your time. In the main event, we had 2 Bellator vets, 2 guys who have extremely decorated resumes, who have fought some of the biggest names that mixed martial arts has to offer. You had a matchup between Edwin Chavez and Justin J. Train Gonzalez. This was a gritty fight that went all the way down to the last second of the last round. Edwin Chavez pulled off the knockout at 4 minutes and 59 seconds of that third round. Had that not been waved off as a stoppage right then and there, the fight would have gone to the cards for a very close and tightly contested 29-28 decision. In that moment, though, the sense of urgency that Edwin had to go out there and pretty much put a stamp on it, because the first round, absolutely, I would give to J-Train. Second round, first half, 100% J-Train again, but Edwin started to rally late into the second. How you score that second, that's something that would be up to your interpretation from how some of those exchanges went. Us on the broadcast table, we're mixed. We said, hey, this could be potentially a Justin round. This could have been an Edwin round. Going into the third, that means that Edwin needed to have that sense of urgency. And J-Train did such a great job through a lot of that third round to keep himself out of damaging positions and was using the cage, using positional control. Once the 10-second short time clacker hit and Edwin broke off from the fence and marched across and he found that finishing shot, that was almost, that was a storybook type of finish, if you will, in that sense. That's just one of those crazy, if you can draw the parallel from Yair Rodriguez and Korean Zombie that happened when it was the Pepsi Center, now Ball Arena, back in 2018. It was that same exact situation where he needed to potentially have a finish to win that fight, and he got the finish just before the bell sounded. Insane action. In the co-main event, ladies and gentlemen, last week I told you guys that this had fireworks written all over it, that this was potentially going to be the fight of the night for us. This wasn't only the fight of the night. That fight between Conor Leonard and Brandon Waters in the co-main event was literally the best fight in Colorado Combat Club history. There's no mincing words about it. Went back and reviewed a lot of them that I thought were really great fights that we've had through the years. This one tops it. This was our Robbie versus Rory 2. This was our Hagler versus Hearns. The fight that Conor Leonard and Brandon Waters put on should be instantly inducted into the Colorado MMA Hall of Fame. No questions asked. Conor Leonard gets his hand raised by Dr. Stoppage. I will say this, though, on the side of Brandon Waters, that dude is an absolute dog. Some of the shots that El Cabron took from King Conor Leonard would have put almost anybody else out. And he just kept on wanting to fight, kept marching forward, just unrelenting warrior spirit through the entire time until the doctor called the fight off. What a fight. I mean, a red curtain, if you will, at certain spots. Both guys were covered in blood. The slugfest, the exchanges on the feet, I mean, they just went to absolute war with each other. Again, the single greatest fight that has ever happened in Colorado Combat Club history, and one of the greatest fights that has ever taken place in the state of Colorado. I'll say it right there. Following from that, you had Miguel Barrientos, our friend of the show. He was successful in his maiden voyage up to 170. Now, Miguel is going to be moving back down to 155. The reason why Miguel took this fight at 170 is he wanted to fight at this particular timeline with this date. However, he was having issues finding an opponent at 55, so they found Andres Guillen, who, hey, shout out to Andres for being the consummate professional, great guy to work with all week. Miguel ends up taking the fight with him, gets the first round TKO. Miguel Barrientos is he's a fun guy to watch. He's an all gas, no brakes type of style, and if you've ever watched Miguel fight, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He comes to bring the war every single time. Next fight from that, you had Alex Gutierrez taking on Mike Schultz. They scrapped it out for a very tightly contested split decision. This was a fight that, if you're asking me my objective opinion, and especially from my vantage point watching it cage side, I thought that this was a fight that could go either way. I thought that this was a fight that both guys presented a case to be able to get their hands raised. In the end, Alex Gutierrez got his hand raised in a split decision. And with that, with my thought that this could go either direction or either guy has a case, well, the judges also agreed with my notion on that, being that it was a split decision. So 2 judges saw it one way, 1 judge saw it the other way. Alex is on the show for a little bit, having surgery on repairing his hand from the fight. But when it's that tightly contested of a split decision, man, I would love to see these guys run it back next year. I don't know if it makes sense for either one of them to want to go and do it, but for me, from my vantage point, and keep all in mind, business aside, I'm a fan first. I'm the ultimate fan, getting to sit there and just talk about fights, watching it cage side with my friends. I would love to see that fight because those dudes went at it. I mean, they scrapped. They left absolutely everything that they had in there fighting against each other. I mean, you saw some of the signature tools and weapons, if you will, from each of the guys. Now, naturally, both of them feel like they could have maybe executed a little bit more on their own individual performances, but it's always hindsight being 2020. I'm close with both of these guys. I love both of them, friends with both of them. So it's always tough when you have that type of a connection with each of the competitors, but that's also why I feel like I can remove so much bias from it, is because I'm looking at it from an even playing field. I love you both. Objectively speaking, I thought that was a fight that was so tightly contested that you could put your poster up on the wall. I could throw a dart at it. That's how you pick your winner. You had Javon Dale out of Prodigy House Muay Thai becoming the first 2-division champion in Colorado Combat Club history. This kid also has a couple of other titles from other sanctioning bodies and other promotions. He's a thoroughbred. Did he, has he at times had to get into a little bit of a firefight? Sure. But Javon Dale, now 7-0, multiple knockouts on his record, has still to this day the most viral knockout in Combat Club history where he completely decleated a guy. It was basically like if you've ever seen the JBL clothesline from hell, the Bradshaw clothesline from hell, that's what the head kick was in that highlight from 2023 from him. This kid is someone who he's young, he's powerful, he's athletic, and he's got that wild hair up you know where that makes him just love going into the fire and scrapping away. I love to see what the future is going to bring for Javon Dale. Jacob Spino took home the vacant 170-pound amateur MMA title after he had a gritty war with Isaiah Wright. Isaiah Wright being a very highly talented black belt within the area, also a skilled Muay Thai practitioner who, fun fact, has a win over Spino in a Muay Thai fight, same venue, just a couple of years previous. Spino put out an awesome post after winning the fight that said, hey, you know what? This is the first time that I've been back when we were there for weigh-ins. It's the first time I've been back in this venue since I lost here a few years ago. This is now my chance to go get my lick back. And what a fight between those two. I mean, it was, again, a super close fight that both fighters had their moments in. And Spino went out there and he got the dub. I mean, I know Isaiah is going to be right back in the thick of things with competition as soon as he's able to. And especially, there's nothing to hang your hat on with a performance like that. They both left it all in there. And for Isaiah's students at Onyx, I think that even though he didn't get his hand raised and bring home the title, that was still such a thrilling performance from each of those guys. I mean, when we're talking about Spino too, respectively, let's make no mistake about it. That is a legit D1 wrestler who came from Kent State. He is Ohio tough. If you know anything about them Ohio boys who especially grew up as wrestlers, those dudes are tough as an old leather boot. He's a big, strong kid. Yeah, that's what happens when you start leveling up with the competition. And every now and then, you're going to trade a matchup with someone who gets you that night. Isaiah got him once. Jacob got him another. Maybe we see him run it back for a rubber match in whatever discipline at some point. Theo Robeson got a big W against Tyree Woolfork. You know, Theo is a kid who I think that he has a lot of potential, especially because he has, I mean, his level change is the fastest level change of any amateur in the state of Colorado, plain and simple. There's nobody who hits that level change when they get in on their takedowns the way that he does. He's a former D1 wrestler, and that's a primary aspect of his game. He's still working on and rounding out some of the other aspects of it. But him having that much of a base or that strong of a base with wrestling, that's always going to make him somebody who is formidable in the cage. I do think that there are some other things that he's got to work on that aren't necessarily in the cage. There are things in relation to, just more or less young kids who have sometimes some problems staying in out of trouble outside of the cage. Hopefully he's somebody who can dial it in now as he's a few fights into his career, into his amateur career, and eventually wants to turn pro. Hopefully all of those things just are young, quote unquote, young, dumb mistakes that they can just be brushed off. And he can continue to grow and actualize some of the potential that he's shown. Again, I know that a lot of his coaches speak very highly of him. But also in speaking with Art Petrosian on the broadcast the other night, his one of his close people, manager, all of that, said that, hey, if we can make sure that he stays dialed in away from the gym, this kid is going to go places. Unfortunately, that's a tale as old as time with athletes or with fighters in general. I just hope that he can reel it in because the kid does have ability. Chance Miller, I like Chance, man. Chance got a big win against Leo Hamad. Chance, he's been searching. He's been working hard trying to get this victory here. He's been competing across multiple different disciplines, across different shows, and just hungry to go out there and to finally get that dub here in Colorado with his hand raised in an MMA fight. And he got that on Saturday night. He was a man on a mission from the very first starting sequence of the fight. Ends up locking up a rear naked choke with just seconds to spare in the round against a very highly skilled grappler in Leo Hamad. I'm happy for Chance. Again, he's a kid who goes out there in every single fight or every single discipline that I've watched him compete in, the kid goes for it. That hopefully gives him some momentum, and we could maybe get him booked on this December show. So we'll see how things turn around for Chance there. You had a kickboxing fight between Daniel Varela taking on Eric Goodall. They got after it for all 3 rounds. You know, it is worth mentioning that Goodall did miss weight. Also, throwing this back a second, Edwin Chavez did miss weight by like 0.9 pounds too. So both there's 2 weight misses. I digress. They got after it for all 3 rounds. It was a fun fight. I've sparred with Eric before. He's a tough kid, man. He's a tough kid, and he sits on his punches, and especially when he starts to work to the body, there's some force behind both those kicks and those punches, and he's tough to put away. Though I will say the more well-rounded approach versus just kind of making it a gritty war came from the Varela side, and Daniel was able to get his hand raised in victory. Opening up the card, we had Cheyenne Chavez, who started the card off with a bang. She got a big TKO finish. That now makes it 2 in a row for her. She is 2-0 since making that transition over to Genesis and being with her new team. She had a lot of excitement. She was full of life during weigh-ins and through all of our media opportunities. So, hey, I like seeing that. I like seeing the life come to a fighter's eyes after they've had some success in the cage and they start to get in their bag a little bit, if you will. Over the weekend on Saturday, we also had 5280 Muay Thai fight series. You had an insanely viral knockout in the main event. I think right now on my YouTube, go check it out. Comments from the Peanut Gallery YouTube. I posted the knockout from Aaron Trevino, the spinning back elbow. Last I saw, it was over like 10K views, something like that, in less than a day. So, I mean, for our side of things in local MMA, that's a pretty big take rate for, or even I should say even more so for local Muay Thai. That's a very big take rate and a viewer number for something from this level. That kid is so talented, though. I mean, he's only like 19, 20 years old. His brother's also a stud. They've been pupils forever of Dwayne Bang Ludwig. Those guys are going places. And Aaron Trevino, that's a stud, plain and simple. Fast, technical, powerful. Yeah, that kid's a problem. Griffin gut checks Kennedy, came out on top of a gutsy war against Kai Bertram. We talked about this one last week, too, that this had the potential of being the fight of the day on the card, and I think it really kind of lived up to those expectations. It was a tight fight all the way down to the end, and Griffin is just one of those dudes who, like I said last week, his record is not reflective of how good of a fighter that he actually is and how tough of a kid that he is. His record going into that fight was at 2-4. But he had multiple very closely contested decision losses, a couple of split decisions, that a couple of scoring sequences in the fight, that 2-4 is 4-2. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. It's so close in some of these fights that's the difference. And when I said this last week, that he could play spoiler to someone in Kai, who Kai, I believe, was 6-1 coming into the fight. And, you know, that's if you don't, and I'm not saying that Kai didn't take him seriously by any means, but some of these vets like Griffin, they're just going to be someone who brother, whether I win or lose, you will know that you got into a fist fight with me. Kai will be back. He's a young kid with a tremendous amount of ability out of that Apex camp, and a lot of those guys do pilgrimages back and forth from Thailand. A couple of them are going to be in action, I believe, this week, or I think Killian Tollard, another great young Muay Thai practitioner out of the area. I think his fight got called off, but our friend of the program, Rebecca Mariposa Watford, she is supposed to fight this week, and I believe it's in New York. So that Apex crew always active in the mix. Speaking of Apex, Brian Medina, a huge win. He was away from action for a couple of years, but I got to say this. Brian Medina was so fun to watch. Like, I mean, you want to talk about somebody who was fast, who was technical, who was crisp, was defensively sound, and his counter game was on point the entire fight. That was Brian Medina. I mean, his nickname is, or his Instagram, I believe, is Speedy Muay Thai. Well, it fit 100%. Jacob Quintana, he won by a second round TKO. Quadjatola Husseini won by unanimous decision. Jaden Etienne won by TKO. That's a kid who I think has definitely some future, or has some potential in this sport. Dylan Ruane, little side quest for him. He picks up the unanimous decision victory. This was Dylan's Muay Thai debut, but our friend of the program, Chris Lalone, is really tight, and Dylan is a part of their crew. Dylan is more or less a grappling specialist. However, in this effort, this is basically what Devin McGinley and what Chris told me, is that, hey, we want him to be able to get out of his comfort zone a little bit. Let's expand the horizons. Let's take him to a format where we remove those comfort aspects. We don't let him go get a backpack on somebody like he does pretty much in every fight. Let's make him focus on just striking. And man, that kid had a fun fight. He was out there trying things. He was throwing spinning stuff. Dylan just chilling 719. That's a kid to pay attention to. Christian Turbeville won by unanimous decision. I was super psyched to see Rory Hanlos get his hand raised by victory in this fight. Rory's had a couple of really tough matches on our cards that didn't go his way. But he has stayed the course, continued to go back to the lab with Brandon Thatch, longtime Denver staple in the combat sports world, and has just gotten better and better and better. And he was finally able to taste that sweet, sweet bit of victory the other day. And Yusuf, the Moroccan Devil's Law, was on the card with us, or was on the call with me during that portion of the card. And he even made the comment, man, there's some of the things that Rory does that it is just right out of the Brandon Thatch playbook. You watch the way that he throws some of these combinations, or the flurries and the volumes that he throws, mixing up the levels, going ground up. It's cool to see the essence of these fighters who we grew up watching now live on through their students. So congratulations to 3D MMA, both Brandon Thatch as well as Rory Hanlos. Jordan Grisham got the split decision victory, and rounding it off, you had Nick Gamma opening up the card with a unanimous decision victory. Talk real quick about the Contender Series before we get along to the UFC. The Contender Series ended the 2025 campaign with a bang, folks. Last week was the last episode of this year for Contender Series, completing the 10-week run. 4 or 5 guys got a contract. Levi Rodriguez, the light heavyweight for the main event. Who knows? I mean, this kid might be a glass cannon for all we know. As we've seen with some of these power punchers in the higher weights in the last little bit, they're an offensive powerhouse and they can definitely put you out, but their defense is doing the Bird Box Challenge. We'll see how that gets him going forward. You had bantamweight Juan Diaz. He's the guy who you're seeing from all of these viral knockouts from Contender Series that happened last night. That's the guy who had the spinning back elbow. That contract was a no-brainer. Marwan Ariki, he almost got finished. In the first round, there's probably 3 sequences where at times you could have made the case, or you could have wondered, hey, what's Mark Smith looking at? to Mark Smith's credit, who sometimes is a little bit manic and trigger happy with stopping a fight, he continued to let it go. In the second round, an insane knockout finish for the Moroccan. Once again, speaking of Yusuf boy, Yusuf was out there with his fellow Moroccan, welcoming him into the UFC as he got that contract. Michael Oliveira tenderized the face of Victor Valenzuela like a cheap steak before finishing him in the second round. He's a welterweight who he's going to be a problem. It'd be interesting to see once you start mixing it up with some higher level grapplers or some guys who might change the level on him. But you put him in there and let him just slug it with 4-ounce gloves with anybody, that kid's going to be a problem for a lot, at least on those first 2 contracts level of guys, the guys within those brackets that they're likely to match him up with. Von Likawan, but hey, what do we say about heavyweight fights? We say it almost every week with some of these. And this was the latter. This was a sloppy, titty-bumping, brutal fight to watch for 15 minutes. And Dana White agreed. He didn't get the contract. Wes Schultz pulled off one of the rarest submissions in MMA and the first one to ever do it on Dana White Contender Series. He was unsuccessful in his first bid on Contender Series. Went back, got a win on the regional scene, got another chance here on Contender, and got himself the victory by submission by Suleyev stretch. Guys, if you don't know what that is, basically think that your hamstring or your foot is being stretched all the way up to your ear. Your foot's going up above your head. You're getting turned into a pretzel. Not a fun position to be in. That wraps it up for Contender Series. We're going to move along and recap, or excuse me, we're going to go along to the UFC card. Just talking real quick, speaking about last week's UFC card, just to recap that off the top, just to give you my thoughts on one of the matchups that I feel like needed some coverage. I'll be the first one to admit I didn't see it going that way for Charles Oliveira. A healthy Charles, 100%. A Charles in normal circumstances, yeah, that's probably what I would have forecasted for that fight. However, when we're taking a look at what the dynamics of the situation were, being that less than 4 months ago, Charles Oliveira got sent to the shadow realm with his eyes open and spent a few minutes in the place where the time doesn't exist at the hands of Ilia Topuria, I thought that this was way too soon of a turnaround for him. My only concession to that was that, hey, well, he knows that one way or the other, this may not go so well. He's going to lay the gloves down. He's in his mid-30s now. He's made a lot of money. He's been a champion, and this could be his send-off being a main event guy in Rio in his home country of Brazil. He made me eat every bit of those thoughts and words. Charles Dubronx Oliveira marched Mateusz Gamrot down. He gave him zero respect on the feet. And he had no problem taking it to the canvas and entering grappling exchanges with Gamrot. Oliveira plays a lot off of his back and uses his guard extremely well. I mean, he's the leading submission holder in the UFC for a reason, not for no reason, for a specific reason, because he is that damn good from it. But we also know that if you're willing to play from your back and you have somebody who has as good of wrestling the way that Gamrot does and has the volume or the amount of ground and pound finishes that he does on his resume, there's a high likelihood that you're going to take some damage in the process. Charles didn't. Charles completely neutralized the threat, and then in the second round was able to get the finish by rear naked choke. He calls for the fight with Max Holloway. Max Holloway accepts on his live stream. It's probably going to be into next year. Max Holloway is still dealing with a hand injury that he's waiting to get cleared for contact on. That would be for a BMF belt. They fought roughly 10 years ago. I believe it was August of 2015, I want to say, on a UFC Fight Night card. And that's when Oliveira had the the neck or the collarbone, whatever, the crazy funky freak injury that happened in the middle of the fight. If he goes out there and wins that one, then that puts him right back into the thick of things in the title talk discussion. We went from saying that Charles is all but washed after getting knocked out that bad against Ilya to now he has one more win and he's right back in the talk of things for a title shot. Giving you perspective, since Oliveira fought Arman Sarukian at UFC 300, he's fought 3 times. He's fought 3 times in the last year alone. Arman still hasn't fought since that time. He's scheduled to fight Dan Hooker in a couple of weeks, but knowing Arman, who knows if that's going to happen? He had a title shot that was right there waiting for him in a rematch with Islam Makhachev, and the dude couldn't make weight for it. Made up an excuse about a back injury. That's why he's been shelved from the UFC or hasn't had one of these high opportunities. He has to go fight Dan Hooker instead of where, if we're looking at it from a true meritocratic standpoint, he is the number 1 contender in that sense, but you can't piss away an opportunity the way that he did and leave them stranded in the fashion that he did. It's a long road for Arman, but again, Oliveira, with what he brings to the company in terms of viewership, fanfare, all of that, he could definitely be one fight away from being right back into it. What do you guys think, though? You could let me know what's your thoughts on Charles Oliveira, Charles do Bronx Oliveira. What were your thoughts on his performance? Hit me up on social media, on Instagram or on Threads at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Let me know what you think. Transitioning over into this weekend's UFC Vancouver preview. We're not going to go through the full card, but some bullet points of some top matchups that I want to talk to you about. In the main event, you have RDR, Reiner de Ritter, taking on Brendan Allen. Now, Brendan Allen is the short notice fill, and this was originally scheduled to be Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Fluffy is currently recovering from an injury that he said he should be back in motion for things to take a fight potentially in Q1 of next year. He was just on the Weighing In podcast with our friend of the program in Big John McCarthy, as well as the punk Josh Thompson. This is a fight where you have 2 guys who have solid grappling. I think that RDR is the better grappler of the 2. Brandon is a little bit more willing to engage in a firefight. I think that he might have a slight edge on the striking. But we also, I feel like some of the stuff with RDR, we're seeing waves of his evolution or his game show through different fights and performances based on the styles. The man was not a 2-division champion in one for no reason. He's continuing to try to march his way toward that UFC middleweight title. He's got a tough test against him, but I do think that if we're looking at this and you're taking a gander at your odds out there, well, if you find some good value for RDR, I think that that's probably a good pick. In the co-main event, you have Trailblazer Kevin Holland taking on Mike Malott. Malott being in his home country of Canada. This fight, Mike is a guy who has a lot of upside, but I also think that Kevin Holland is the ultimate enigma of the sport. Kevin Holland's media day stuff, or some of the initial interviews that he did this week since getting into Canada, I don't want to say are concerning, because that's not necessarily the right word, but we've seen this in the past where Kevin has had these kind of nonchalant or brush it off, I don't really care who he is, or I don't, it is what it is, I'm just here to fight sort of messages in his interviews. And those are the fights where he goes out there and he gets dog walked. On the flip side, when we have a Kevin Holland who is inspired or is dialed in and motivated, for lack of a better term, he's a tough out for anybody, especially at 170, given his dimensions. He's certainly the more experienced guy, but how will that fare once it comes time for the action on Saturday? That is always the ultimate concern for me. If I'm somebody who's out there in that world trying to place wagers, then if it were me, I wouldn't even come close to a Kevin Holland fight, just because there isn't a baseline level of consistency that we can establish. You have a feature fight between Chito Vera taking on Ayman Zahabi. This could be a breakout performance for Zahabi. I mean, Chito is as tough as it gets. And as a fan, just loving to watch fighting, there's no way that you can't like Cheeto. Like, Cheeto is one of the more entertaining guys that Bantamweight has had to offer over the course of the last few years. And, I think that this is a point where after he's had his couple of shots at the top, he had his title shot against Sean. He's been in the tops of the rankings, and now he's a little bit older now. At what point does he become more or less in a gatekeeper role? I don't know if that's what the thought is with this matchup, but you're going to get a good indication of where exactly Ayman Zahabi is over the weekend and how he performs against Marlon Chito Vera. Jasmine Jasudavicius, she has taken on her stiffest test so far as she goes up against former title challenger Manon Fior. And I say this in the stiffest because of, Jasmine, she's fought highly accredited and tough opponents, right? Like, I don't want to slight some of the people of the past, but where she caught them timing wise was maybe a better point versus right now. Manon is in her prime. But Jasmine being back at home, hey, Jasmine was a very cool person to work with while she was here in Denver last year fighting. So for that reason alone, I'm going with Jasmine Jasudavicius and not the Frenchie. Moving along from that, I think that you're going to have a very fun matchup between Kyle Nelson and Matt Frivola. Just a couple of guys who go in there and love slanging them. Anytime you have Charles Jourdain on a card, that's never a miss. I mean, in victory or in defeat, Charles Jourdain has entertaining performances. He's taken on Davey Grant. Davey Grant's a little bit further along in his career now toward the back nine. But again, another guy who is a stalwart veteran who goes in there to fight every single time. And this is a matchup between a couple of long in the tooth veterans, and I'm excited to see it. Just a couple more to speak about here before we move along to the next segment. You have consummate Denver pro, the fan favorite, a guy who you will never have a sideways interaction with or something that, you walk away not saying that, man, that is just one of the most genuinely nicest human beings that you could meet. You have Drew Dober on the card. Drew's fighting Kyle Prepelic. Now, Drew needs a win. Drew is on the wrong side of 3 losses, and he, in my opinion, he absolutely has to win this fight. This is a must-win situation for him. He's one of the best that the lightweight division has ever seen in terms of his knockout efficiency and his knockout rate. He needs to pull that off this weekend. Another couple to talk about here. We have Osmat Bakoyev. Just want to give him a shout out because he fought here in Denver for the LFA, was a former LFA champion, had a massive knockout here at Magnus Arena just a couple of years ago, the summer before last, I believe that it was. And he's gone into the UFC and has had a tremendous run so far. And he's a hilarious follow on social media. Check him out. And then the last one that I want to give a shout out to, another LFA veteran who also fought here in Denver, who had the chance to interview and talk to, she's a really cool girl. And shout out to the Scarecrow, Melissa Croden. She's making her UFC debut this weekend. This is back in her native Canada. I'm excited to see what she has to offer in the octagon. And, she's got a tough test in Lisboa from Brazil, but I think that Melissa has the tools in her tool belt to be able to go out there and get it done. She's been in Vegas over the course of the last couple of months, just basically sharpening all the tools between the PI and with her team and those close people around her. Shout out to Haley Cowan as well in the process. So I'm really excited to see that fight. That's going to open up the card on Saturday. Moving along from that basically, guys, that went fast. Are we already we're at the 50 mark? Well, I'm going to talk to you real quick before we head into 3 rounds. I'm going to talk to you real quick about a very special project here in the community. We have the Guardian Project, which is a worldwide effort, but Guardian Project is aimed to provide jiu-jitsu for all. The mission of Guardian, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, they are committed to providing free youth jiu-jitsu scholarships to the underserved youth and at-risk communities around the world. Guardian is dedicated to offering children year-round stability and consistency through their programs, not focusing on just physical transformation, but also on fostering positive friendships, mentorship opportunities, and secure environments during these challenging times. By partnering with established and trustworthy academies, donors can trust that a minimum of 85% of their contributions will directly fund the scholarships that they support. There are more than 390 underserved youth that are being fully sponsored amongst the 17 projects worldwide. You can visit factoryxmuaythai.com to make your tax-deductible donation and to help support a student in our community today. And now, moving along to 3 rounds. Got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards. First round.
After being pulled from the Newark, New Jersey BKFC card, Frankie Edgar has finally released a statement. What are your thoughts?
Let's just call it for what it is. They used Frankie's name, image, and likeness to be able to sell tickets, to create a buzz and a draw for that Newark, New Jersey card. Frankie is Mr. New Jersey. Frankie completed all the medicals. He did everything that he was asked for. And then about a week out, David Feldman, BKFC, also been on the program before. He said that his doctors recommended that Frankie don't fight, and they pulled him from the card. He cited that his recent history, his downtime or layoff from activity and fighting, as well as the string of KO TKO losses. That wasn't new information. That's all old news. That is why Frankie retired in the first place. It's because he kept on getting knocked out. All due respect to the former UFC champion. Even in Frankie's prime UFC run as a champion, when he had a granite chin that nobody could crack for years and years until it finally crumbled. Throughout the years of his prime run, Frankie was never a crisp and tight boxer. He's always been known for his pace, his wrestling, and his ability to just push his opponent to the absolute brink. He was a smaller guy fighting up in weight class in his most effective time in his career. And as that neutralized, well, so did all the rest of the things. And then that's where you see the downfall or the slide in terms of losses and bad knockouts. Again, this was not new information. So for you to come out and say at the 11th hour or about a week out from the card and then pull the old switcheroo, I don't fault Frankie for feeling like he got bamboozled. Frankie on the Champ and the Tramp podcast, his show that he has every week with Roger. I don't even remember Roger's last name, but if you all used to watch Jersey Shore back in the day, his co-host is the big old Tiggle Bitties chick. It was her boyfriend from the show, but that's his co-host of the show. Yeah, he talked about it and he said that he felt like it was that he got ran a Fugazi scam, that he went through, passed all the medicals, did everything that they asked for him, and that the actual medicals came back clear and that he didn't have anything that would have produced a failure or keeping him out of competition. Frankie went on so far as to say that, hey, I don't want you to get too far ahead of yourself or, go too wild and telling your family things, but you have a clean bill of health. So this is my thought on it. And I mean, it happens all the time on every level of show, or especially regional to local, and a lot of times on the local side of things, especially as it relates to there being a big name or a potential draw that sells tickets. They used Frankie's name, image, and likeness to sell a card in New Jersey. Once they released the news that he was going to be fighting Jimmy Rivera, then I believe that the PR backlash that they received from the public at large, because I don't know a single person who saw that news who thought that, yes, this is a good idea, or yes, this is something that Frankie should be involved in. I don't know a single person who said that that was a good idea. So I think that they realize what a fiasco and a black eye for BKFC it would be if they allowed for Fight Night to go through and, again, for the actual medical reasons, not saying that Frankie failed medical, but from the science of, hey, once you've had the lights shut out and when you've had him shut out as bad as Frankie has a few times, it's that much easier to happen again. Just ask Vanderlei Silva. I think that in this instance, yes, it was 100% the right move to pull him from participation on the card, but he should have never even been in that position in the first place. Because then, to Frankie's side of things, it's not fair either. Because then you went and he starts training for a few weeks, and he had that demon, that beast, that fire, that whatever you want to call it, that drives you as a fighter to want to go in there and put yourself in harm's way day after day, training and going through those hard rounds, taking the hits, being sore every day. That had left him. He said he had no interest in fighting again. But BKFC came to him and they brought the number to the table that he said he would be comfortable doing it for. You were unfair to him and to me, disrespectful to him, and you allowed for him to go back, get into that mode, into that mindset, all for naught. Frankie says, hey, if you're a fighter going or potentially going to BKFC, be wary. We've seen a lot of people have a lot of luck with them and a lot of guys who have gotten a pretty sizable paycheck and some solid treatment. Frankie obviously feels as diametrically opposed to that as you could possibly be.
Rumors have swirled that Ilya Topuria and his wife are allegedly split up. Story or non-story?
With as involved as she's been since they've been married, or has always been with him at nearly every step of the way. She was in the cage with him after fights. She's been side by side with him on interviews and has even chimed in a couple of points, especially the notorious Ariel Helwani clip on Uncrowned. So I do believe that there is at least a little bit of a newsworthy element to this split up, being that they are a public couple, if you will, and then some of the statements that she put up on social media that were kind of unclear. They both removed each other's pictures and all that from social media. But listen, if this is true, and if Ilya is in that dark place and staying locked in, it is going to be a brutally violent night for whoever he fights next. He was doing that to people when he was happy. What's he going to do now when he's pissed off and locked in and has a bloodlust about him? To give you a correlative or a comparable that's going on right now in the NFL, Puka Nacua, in his situation, the LA Rams receiver, he got left high and dry by his old lady. And his coach told him, hey, that feeling that you have, that pit in your gut, that just turmoil that you feel, keep that. Stay locked in on that. Puka is now having the best start in NFL history for any receiver that there has ever been in the 100+ years of the league. So if there's any sort of indication from what Puka has done, watch out whoever is with Ilya next. And it may be Gaethje, it may be Patty, it may be Arman with a big win over Hooker. Who knows? One way or the other, watch out.
Dustin Poirier reflects on a recent retirement, saying, "A part of me has died." What are your thoughts?
I think that is very understandable. When you're somebody like Dustin Poirier, who was, he was the paid in full guy who success is rent and it's got to be paid every single day and the dues are owed every day type of guy, or whatever the saying is. You know what I'm trying to go with. Dustin was that guy. He further went on to explain his thoughts on that question, and he said, when you've had something that has been a part of your life that you have been fully immersed in every single day for the last 20 years, it's hard to just remove that part of you. It's hard to just shut that switch off. And I think that that's something that, whether it's fighters or other pro athletes in general, or not just pro. I mean, athletes, period. You know, you went through your entire life of playing, and then once that career is over, not to say that you held your entire identity on that one thing, but a large portion of who you are and a large portion of your identity is based off of what your craft was. That being said, I can absolutely understand what Dustin is saying, and I just hope that he finds something that helps stoke that fire in him. And it's tough because there's nothing like fighting. There will never be another thing that he will ever experience in life that will give him that type of rush, that type of thrill, that type of just my blood gets going sort of feeling the way that fighting does. He's involved with a lot of different business ventures, from his charity to other ventures, and he's got a great family around him. I just hope that Dustin can find something to where he can have some semblance of inner peace, if you will. Just like that, though, folks, we are all out of time. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in with us each and every week for our original combat sports programming. I want to thank my man, Danny Bailey, behind the boards, holding it down for me each and every week. Please make sure that you check out what the Mile High Sports crew has to offer right now. Again, no shortage of topics from the CU Buffs, the Denver Broncos, the Avalanche, the Nuggets. There is plenty of things to talk about. There's also postseason baseball going on. They have a lot of coverage all the way around, whether you're checking it out on the YouTube, the website, magazine. Keep your eye out for the next merch drops. We're coming to you live here today from the number 38, presented to you by Volo. We will be back with you next week, same time, same place. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. This is the MMA Plug, presented to you by Mile High Sports.